Hi guys, tonight we're exploring a scenario that would reshape modern civilization overnight. What if the internet suddenly vanished forever? Not just a temporary outage, but a complete and permanent disappearance of the digital infrastructure that connects our entire world. If you enjoy these civilization-altering sleep stories that explore how dependent we've become on modern technology, hit that like button and subscribe for more. And drop a comment letting me know what time it is where you are and where you're listening from. I always appreciate hearing from you night listeners scattered across the map. Alright, let's begin. The notification arrives at exactly 3:27 in the morning, Pacific Standard Time. Sarah Chen, a network engineer at one of San Francisco's primary internet exchange points, stares at her monitoring dashboard as every single connection indicator turns from green to red in a cascading wave of digital death. Within seconds, the humming servers that route terabytes of data every second fall silent. The fiber optic cables carrying light-speed conversations between continents go dark. In server farms across Silicon Valley, housing over 200,000 servers worth $43 billion, the steady pulse of blinking lights that has illuminated the digital age for decades suddenly stops. But Sarah's experience is just one droplet in an ocean of simultaneous disconnection. At this exact moment across the globe, similar scenes unfold. In London's Telehouse data centre, which handles nearly 30% of the United Kingdom's internet traffic, engineers watch helplessly as their systems flatline. The underwater cables stretching 450,000 kilometres across ocean floors, carrying 99% of international data traffic, cease their invisible work of connecting continents. The satellite networks orbiting Earth at altitudes of 35,000 kilometres above the equator, which back up terrestrial connections and serve remote regions, go silent in their celestial dance. The internet, this vast nervous system of human civilization, carrying over 4.6 billion users and generating approximately $4.2 trillion in economic value annually, has vanished completely. Not crashed, not overwhelmed, not temporarily disrupted, but utterly and permanently ceased to exist. Every router, every server, every fiber optic cable, every wireless signal, every satellite link, every undersea connection has simultaneously and irrevocably failed. The digital infrastructure that processes over 120 billion emails daily, streams over 1 billion hours of video content, and facilitates over $3 trillion in e-commerce transactions, each year has evaporated like morning mist. The immediate aftermath unfolds in waves of confusion and disbelief. In Tokyo, where the average person checks their smartphone 150 times per day, commuters on the Yamanote line stare at blank screens. The city's sophisticated digital payment systems, processing over 60 million transactions daily, have frozen mid-transaction. Convenience stores that rely entirely on electronic payments watch customers fumble for physical cash many haven't carried in years. The Tokyo Stock Exchange, which handles over $600 billion in daily trading volume through high-frequency algorithmic systems, stops completely. Traders accustomed to executing thousands of trades per second find themselves staring at black monitors, their sophisticated algorithms suddenly as useful as ancient cave paintings. In New York City, the financial district experiences a different kind of silence. Wall Street's trading floors, where over $25 trillion in annual transactions normally flow through fiber optic networks at the speed of light, become eerily quiet. The Nasdaq data center in Carteret, New Jersey, housing over 5,000 servers that process 40 billion data messages daily, sits dormant. High-frequency trading firms that invested billions in reducing network latency by mere microseconds discover their competitive advantages have evaporated instantly. The Federal Reserve's digital payment systems, which process over $600 billion daily through Fedwire alone, cannot complete a single transaction. London's financial district faces similar paralysis. The city's trading floors, normally processing over $2 trillion in foreign exchange transactions daily, fall silent. Canary Wharf's gleaming towers, housing data centres that consume enough electricity to power 50,000 homes, become monuments to a vanished digital age. The London Stock Exchange's servers, capable of processing 65 million messages per second, sit as lifeless as abandoned factories. Across the Atlantic, the immediate human response varies dramatically by generation and geography. In rural Montana, where 73-year-old rancher Bill Morrison never fully trusted the internet anyway, life continues with minimal disruption. His ranch operations, managed much the same way his grandfather ran them, rely on landline phones that still function and face-to-face relationships built over decades. His cattle still need feeding, his fences still need mending, and his neighbours still respond to calls for help. The absence of GPS tracking for his livestock and digital weather forecasting creates challenges, but not catastrophic ones. However, in San Francisco's Mission District, 24-year-old Maria Santos experiences something approaching existential crisis. Her entire adult life has been mediated through digital platforms. Her job as a social media manager for a tech startup evaporates instantly. Her income, derived from managing online advertising campaigns worth over $2 million annually, disappears. Her social connections, maintained primarily through messaging apps and social platforms, vanish. Even her romantic relationship, conducted largely through constant text messaging and photo sharing, faces unprecedented strain as she and her partner struggle to remember how to communicate without digital intermediation. The economic implications reveal themselves within hours. Amazon's fulfillment centers, processing over 13 million packages daily through sophisticated logistics algorithms, grind to a halt. The company's cloud computing division, Amazon Web Services, which provides infrastructure for over 30% of the internet and generates over $70 billion annually, becomes instantly worthless. The warehouses filled with over $15 billion worth of inventory become inaccessible through their normal digital management systems. Supply chains that have evolved over decades to rely on just-in-time delivery, orchestrated through digital networks, face immediate crisis. Walmart's distribution network, moving over $45 billion worth of goods annually through digital logistics systems, cannot coordinate deliveries. The company's 4,700 stores across the United States, each receiving multiple deliveries daily scheduled through digital systems, find their shelves beginning to empty within days. The sophisticated algorithms that predict demand, optimize routes, and coordinate with suppliers across 65 countries become useless overnight. In China, where mobile payments processed over $60 trillion in transactions during the previous year, daily commerce grinds to an unprecedented halt. Cities like Shenzhen, where over 90% of transactions normally occur through digital payment platforms, witness scenes not experienced in decades. Street vendors who haven't handled physical currency in years struggle to make change. The massive Alibaba logistics network, processing over 100 billion packages annually through automated systems, stops completely. Manufacturing facilities dependent on digital coordination with suppliers find their production lines stuttering and failing. The psychological impact proves equally profound and varies dramatically across populations. In South Korea, which boasts the world's highest internet penetration rate at over 96% of the population and average connection speeds of 125 megabits per second, the sudden digital silence creates a form of collective trauma. Gaming cafes that normally buzz with activity 24 hours a day stand empty. The country's massive online gaming industry, worth over $6 billion annually and employing over 200,000 people, vanishes overnight. Meanwhile, in rural areas of developing nations where internet penetration remained below 30%, daily life continues with less dramatic disruption. In villages across sub-Saharan Africa, where many people never develop dependence on digital systems, traditional methods of communication, commerce, and coordination continue functioning. Markets still operate through haggling and physical currency. News spreads through word of mouth and battery-powered radios. Agricultural work continues following seasonal patterns established over centuries. The medical sector faces catastrophic challenges within days. Modern hospitals rely extensively on digital systems for everything from patient records to diagnostic equipment to pharmaceutical ordering. Massachusetts General Hospital, with its 515 beds and over 26,000 employees, discovers that its electronic health record system, containing detailed medical histories for over 1 million patients, has become inaccessible. MRI, machines worth over $3 million each, cannot transmit imaging data. Pharmacies cannot access prescription databases or verify insurance coverage. The complex logistics of medical supply chains, coordinating everything from surgical instruments to medications across global networks, collapse entirely. Emergency response systems face particularly acute challenges. 911 call centers that normally receive over 600 million calls annually find their computer-aided dispatch systems useless. Emergency responders cannot access digital maps, coordinate resources, or communicate through their usual digital channels. The sophisticated algorithms that normally route ambulances efficiently through traffic and coordinate with hospital emergency departments fail completely. Air travel experiences immediate and complete disruption. The Federal Aviation Administration's air traffic control systems, which normally guide over 45,000 flights daily through U.S. airspace, lose their digital coordination capabilities. Commercial aircraft in flight, when the internet vanishes, find themselves isolated, unable to receive weather updates, flight plan modifications, or ground coordination. Pilots must rely entirely on radio communication and manual navigation techniques many haven't practiced in years. Major airports like Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson, which normally processes over 300,000 passengers daily, cannot manage boarding, baggage handling, or security screening without their digital systems. The complex logistics of coordinating over 1,000 flights daily across 290 gates become impossible using pre-digital methods. Similar scenes unfold at Dubai International Airport, handling over 100 million passengers annually, and Beijing Capital International Airport, processing over 150 million passengers per year. The shipping industry faces equally severe disruptions. The Port of Los Angeles, which handles over 9 million containers, annually worth over $400 billion, loses its sophisticated digital tracking and coordination systems. Container ships arriving with loads worth millions of dollars cannot be efficiently unloaded or their cargo tracked to final destinations. The just-in-time supply chain systems that move consumer goods from Asian factories to American retailers break down completely. Educational institutions experience varying levels of disruption. Universities that invested heavily in online learning platforms find significant portions of their educational delivery systems inoperable. Stanford University's online courses serving over 100,000 students worldwide vanish instantly. The massive open online course platforms that democratized education for millions of learners globally cease to exist. Research collaborations dependent on digital communication and data sharing face severe obstacles. However, traditional educational institutions with strong physical infrastructure adapt more successfully. Elementary schools that maintained libraries with physical books and classrooms designed for face-to-face instruction continue functioning, though with reduced efficiency. Teachers who remember pre-digital pedagogical methods find themselves suddenly valuable in ways they hadn't been for decades. The media landscape undergoes dramatic transformation. Television networks that relied heavily on digital distribution find their reach severely limited to traditional broadcast coverage areas. Netflix, with its 230 million subscribers worldwide and content library worth over $15 billion, vanishes completely. The on-demand entertainment that shaped viewing habits for an entire generation becomes inaccessible overnight. Newspapers that transition primarily to digital distribution face existential crisis. The New York Times, with its over 10 million digital subscribers generating over $800 million annually, loses most of its audience reach. However, local newspapers that maintained printing presses and physical distribution networks suddenly find themselves invaluable sources of information in their communities. Radio experiences a renaissance. The medium that many considered obsolete becomes critically important for information distribution. AM and FM stations broadcasting over terrestrial networks become primary sources for news, weather, and emergency information. Battery-powered and car radios that seemed ancient just days earlier become precious resources. Banking and financial services face catastrophic disruption. ATM networks processing over 6 billion transactions annually cease functioning. Credit card systems that normally handle over 200 billion transactions yearly worth over $8 trillion cannot process payments. The digital infrastructure that created a largely cashless society in many developed nations proves to be a critical vulnerability. Local banks that maintain traditional teleservices and physical documentation systems adapt more successfully than purely digital financial institutions. Credit unions with strong community ties and physical branches find themselves handling customers who haven't visited in person for years. The sophisticated algorithmic trading systems that dominate modern financial markets, processing trillions of dollars through high-frequency trades measured in microseconds, become utterly useless. Central banks face unprecedented challenges in monetary policy implementation. The Federal Reserve's digital payment systems, which normally process over $700 billion daily, cannot function. The complex web of international currency trading, typically handling over $6.6 trillion daily in foreign exchange markets, stops completely. Economic coordination between nations that relied heavily on digital communication becomes extremely difficult. Agriculture reveals interesting contrasts in vulnerability and resilience. Large-scale industrial farming operations dependent on GPS-guided tractors, digital monitoring systems, and algorithmic optimization of planting and harvesting find themselves severely handicapped. Precision agriculture systems that normally optimize fertilizer application, monitor soil conditions, and predict yields through satellite imagery and digital sensors become inoperable. Conversely, smaller farms using traditional methods experience less dramatic disruption. Amish communities, which deliberately avoided digital dependence, continue their agricultural operations with minimal change. Their horse-drawn equipment, manual labor methods, and traditional knowledge of seasonal patterns prove suddenly valuable in ways the broader society hadn't appreciated. Transportation systems reveal similar patterns of vulnerability and adaptation. Public transit systems in major cities that rely heavily on digital coordination face significant challenges. New York City's Metropolitan Transportation Authority, serving over 5 million riders daily through digital payment systems and real-time coordination, struggles to maintain service levels. The sophisticated algorithms that optimize subway timing and manage passenger flow become useless. However, simpler transportation systems adapt more easily. cities with traditional transportation infrastructure and human-operated systems experience less severe disruption. Bus systems that maintained human dispatchers and cash payment options continue functioning, though with reduced efficiency. The energy sector experiences cascading effects throughout the first weeks. Power grids that rely on digital monitoring and coordination for load balancing and distribution optimization face unprecedented challenges. The North American power grid, serving over 360 million people across interconnected networks spanning thousands of miles, loses its sophisticated digital management systems. Nuclear power plants generating over 800 billion kilowatt-hours annually in the United States alone face particular challenges. While safety systems remain operational through hardened analog backup systems, the complex digital monitoring and optimization systems that maximize efficiency become inoperable. Coal and natural gas plants experience similar issues with digital fuel management and emissions monitoring systems. Renewable energy systems prove particularly vulnerable due to their heavy reliance on digital coordination. Solar farms with thousands of panels requiring algorithmic optimization of power output based on weather conditions and grid demand cannot operate efficiently. Wind farms that normally adjust turbine orientation and output through sophisticated digital systems lose much of their operational efficiency. Water and sewage treatment facilities face critical challenges. Modern treatment plants serving millions of people rely extensively on digital monitoring systems to maintain water quality and optimize chemical treatment processes. The Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, serving over 4 million people, loses its sophisticated digital monitoring capabilities for water quality and distribution pressure. Waste management systems that coordinate collection routes and processing through digital logistics face severe disruption. Cities accustomed to optimize garbage collection schedules coordinated through digital systems must revert to manual coordination methods. Recycling facilities that sort materials through digital scanning and automated systems lose much of their processing capacity. Weather forecasting, which modern civilization takes for granted, becomes severely compromised. The National Weather Service relies on data from thousands of digital sensors, satellite feeds, and sophisticated computer models processing millions of data points hourly. Meteorologists lose access to the detailed forecasting models that predict weather patterns days in advance. Weather prediction reverts to methods not used since the 1970s, dramatically reducing accuracy and advance warning times. This proves particularly dangerous for agriculture, aviation, and emergency preparedness. Farmers lose the detailed weather forecasts that optimize planting and harvesting schedules. Airlines cannot access the meteorological data essential for safe flight planning. Emergency management agencies lose their ability to predict and prepare for severe weather events. Scientific research experiences profound disruption across multiple disciplines. Particle accelerators like the Large Hadron Collider, with its 27-kilometer circumference and generating over 15 petabytes of data annually, cannot coordinate the complex experiments that require split-second timing across thousands of sensors. Years of research data stored in digital formats become inaccessible. Astronomical observatories that rely on digital sensors and computer-controlled telescopes lose much of their research capability. The Hubble Space Telescope, orbiting over 500 kilometers above Earth, cannot transmit its observations back to researchers. Ground-based observatories that maintain some analog capabilities adapt more successfully, though with significantly reduced research efficiency. Medical research faces particularly severe setbacks. Clinical trials that track patient outcomes through digital databases lose critical data. Pharmaceutical companies researching new treatments find years of digital research data inaccessible. The development of new medicines, which typically requires analysing massive datasets through digital systems, slows dramatically. International relations undergo significant changes as diplomatic communication reverts to traditional methods. The instant communication that enabled rapid international coordination through digital channels no longer exists. Diplomatic crises that might previously have been resolved through immediate digital communication now require slower, more formal communication methods. Trade relationships that developed based on digital coordination face severe strain. Supply chains spanning multiple countries and requiring precise timing become extremely difficult to coordinate. The complex international agreements that govern digital trade and data flow become irrelevant overnight, creating uncertainty about international economic relationships. Cultural exchange that flourished through digital platforms experiences dramatic reduction. The instant global communication that allowed people worldwide to share ideas, art, and experiences largely disappears. Cultural movements that spread rapidly through social media platforms can no longer achieve global reach instantly. Language evolution, which had been accelerated by digital communication platforms, creating global linguistic communities, slows dramatically. The rapid spread of slang, expressions, and linguistic innovations through social media platforms ceases. Regional dialect and languages that have been homogenized by global digital communication begin reasserting their distinctiveness. Environmental impacts reveal themselves over weeks and months. The sudden cessation of digital activity dramatically reduces global energy consumption. Data centers worldwide that normally consume approximately 200 terawatt-hours annually, equivalent to the entire energy consumption of Argentina, stop drawing power. The carbon emissions from digital infrastructure, representing approximately 4% of global greenhouse gas emissions, drop to zero overnight. However, the loss of digital environmental monitoring systems creates new challenges. Satellites monitoring deforestation, ocean temperatures, and atmospheric conditions cannot transmit their data. Climate research that depends on processing massive datasets through digital systems faces severe setbacks. The sophisticated climate models used to predict global warming trends become temporarily inoperable. Wildlife conservation efforts that relied heavily on digital tracking and monitoring systems face significant challenges. GPS collars, tracking endangered species, stop transmitting location data. Digital camera traps used to monitor wildlife populations become useless. Conservation organizations lose their ability to coordinate efforts through digital communication platforms. Urban planning and management face unprecedented challenges as cities lose the digital systems that coordinate traffic flow, utility distribution, and emergency services. Smart city initiatives that invested billions in digital infrastructure to optimize urban efficiency become worthless overnight. Traffic management systems that reduce congestion and emissions through algorithmic optimization cease functioning. Public safety undergoes dramatic changes as law enforcement agencies lose access to digital databases, communication systems, and analytical tools. Police departments cannot access criminal databases, coordinate between jurisdictions, or utilize forensic analysis systems dependent on digital processing. Crime investigation methods revert to techniques not widely used since the 1980s. The legal system faces significant challenges as court systems lose access to digital case management, legal databases, and electronic filing systems. Lawyers cannot access the vast digital legal libraries that streamlined research and case preparation. Contract enforcement becomes complicated for agreements that existed primarily in digital formats. Social movements and political organization undergo fundamental changes. Grassroots political campaigns that relied heavily on digital organizing lose their primary coordination tools. Political fundraising through online platforms becomes impossible. voter registration systems that transition to digital formats create challenges for election administration. However, traditional forms of political organisation experience resurgence. Town halls, community meetings, and face-to-face political organising become more important. Local political organisations with strong community ties adapt more successfully than those dependent on digital outreach. Mental health impacts vary dramatically across populations and age groups. Younger generations who developed their social skills and relationships primarily through digital platforms experience significant psychological challenges. Social anxiety increases among people unaccustomed to face-to-face interaction without digital mediation. Conversely, some individuals experience improved mental health as they escape the constant connectivity and information overload that characterize digital life. Sleep patterns improve among people no longer exposed to blue light from screens and constant digital stimulation. Some communities report increased face-to-face social interaction and community engagement. The creative industries undergo massive transformation. Musicians who distributed their work primarily through digital streaming platforms lose access to their audiences. Independent artists who built careers through social media platforms lose their promotional channels. The democratization of creative distribution that digital platforms enabled reverses dramatically. However, live performance experiences resurgence. Concert venues, theatres, and other physical entertainment venues become more valuable as entertainment options contract. Local music scenes strengthen as people seek in-person entertainment experiences. Publishing faces dramatic changes as ebooks become inaccessible, and print publishing experiences sudden increased demand. Publishing houses that maintain printing capabilities find themselves valuable in ways they hadn't been for years. Local bookstores experience unprecedented demand as people seek physical books and magazines. Gaming culture transforms completely as online gaming platforms serving billions of users worldwide cease functioning. The massive multiplayer online games that connected players globally disappear. The professional gaming industry worth billions of dollars collapses overnight. However, traditional board games, card games, and physical recreation activities experience dramatic increases in popularity. Religious and spiritual communities reveal interesting patterns of adaptation. Religious organizations that invested heavily in digital outreach and online services lose significant reach. Megachurches that built their congregations through digital marketing face challenges maintaining their communities. However, traditional religious communities with strong physical gathering spaces and established community relationships adapt more successfully. Local churches, synagogues, mosques, and other religious institutions that maintain strong in-person traditions find their community bonds strengthened as people seek spiritual comfort and social connection. Food production and distribution systems face severe challenges as digital coordination of complex supply chains becomes impossible. Restaurants that relied on digital ordering systems and delivery platforms lose significant portions of their business models. Food delivery services worth billions of dollars globally cease operating. Local food systems experience resurgence as people cannot easily access food from distant sources. Farmers' markets become more important as direct sales channels between producers and consumers. Community gardens and local food production gain increased attention as people recognize the vulnerability of distant supply chains. The pharmaceutical industry faces critical challenges as drug development, manufacturing coordination, and distribution systems lose their digital infrastructure. Prescription management systems that prevented dangerous drug interactions become unavailable. The complex global supply chains that produce generic medications cannot coordinate efficiently. However, local pharmacies with traditional inventory management and strong relationships with healthcare providers adapt more successfully. Community pharmacies that maintained personal relationships with customers find themselves providing critical healthcare coordination services. As weeks turn to months, adaptation patterns become clearer. Communities with strong social capital and traditional institutions adapt more successfully than those highly dependent on digital mediation. Rural areas with diverse local economies prove more resilient than urban centres dependent on digital services. Interestingly, some aspects of life improve for certain populations. Work-life balance improves as people cannot access work communications outside traditional hours. Family relationships strengthen as digital distractions disappear. Local community engagement increases as people seek social connection through in-person activities. Educational institutions that maintain strong in-person programs and physical libraries find their traditional approaches suddenly valued. Skilled trades that required hands-on training rather than digital education become highly sought after. Traditional crafts and manual skills that seemed obsolete gain renewed importance. The gradual adaptation reveals humanity's remarkable resilience and adaptability. Innovation occurs through necessity as people rediscover and adapt traditional methods to modern needs. New forms of organization emerge that blend traditional community structures with contemporary knowledge and resources. The permanent disappearance of the internet ultimately forces a fundamental re-evaluation of progress, efficiency, and human connection. While the immediate disruption causes tremendous hardship and challenge, the long-term adaptation reveals both the incredible dependence modern civilization developed on digital infrastructure and humanity's capacity to adapt and thrive under radically changed circumstances. This scenario illuminates critical questions about technological dependence, social resilience, and the true foundations of human civilization. The Internet's permanent absence would undoubtedly cause massive disruption and require fundamental reorganization of virtually every aspect of modern life. But it would also reveal the enduring importance of physical infrastructure, human relationships, and traditional knowledge systems that continue functioning regardless of digital connectivity. The world that emerges from such a transformation would be fundamentally different, potentially more localized and community-oriented, but would still retain the essential human drives for connection, creativity, innovation, and progress that transcend any particular technological framework.